I turned and walked dazedly away. The last 26 years of my life had been taken from me just to have this moment, and I'd wasted it. No, that wasn't true. The entire rest of my life had been taken away, because it would be totally impossible to pick up the thread of my old life by the time I finally arrived back in 2031. Everything in my life had been burned away in that damn fire, just like it had for Timmy. It was too much. I was breaking. I turned around, dove into that janitor's closet, and completely fucking lost it. I didn't care if anyone heard. I just wanted to know that no one could touch me, and that I would be completely alone as I finally broke and ugly cried my hope away. I had no desire to live after this moment. The concept of existing was too painful. Everything was over. I wanted my story to end. Eventually, though, I stopped crying. I was actually surprised to realize that the story kept going. I was so focused on where and when I was that my imagination simply couldn't conceive of an after, so I had assumed that there was none. Time, it seems, did not care for what I thought. So with nothing else in my script, I stood up, walked out the door, and continued to be the chief of medicine. "Your doctors suck ass," the little girl explained as I checked her bandages. "Your language sucks ass, young lady," I replied as I replaced the gauze. It was healing perfectly. I'd been the one who removed her appendix. Of course it was faultless. Well, why the hell did he leave forceps in me then? I'm only 12 years old, and even I know that there was no reason to use that kind of equipment when my arm was just cut. I raised an eyebrow. Something about her frizzy hair, dark brown eyes, and edginess seemed so familiar. "So you think you could do a better job in my operating room, kid?" She shrugged. "The bar's pretty low." I snorted. "You survived a burst appendix." "You're welcome." The girl nodded flippantly. "Yeah, but that's your job. A better job would have been to notice the problem before it got so bad in the first place." I dropped my hands to my hips, exasperated. "You think you've got this figured out?" "Yeah," she responded casually. "Well, one day I will." "You want to be a doctor?" I shot back. "Maybe," she answered, staring at her arm instead of at me. "But probably a nurse. Doctors are just nurses who get tired of having their hands dirty." I chuckled for the first time in recent memory, then looked down and read her chart once more. I stared back at her. "Lydia, that's my name. The same information has been on your page this entire time," she responded. "See? That's what I mean. You have to pay attention to what's happening before time runs out." I resolved to be kind to myself when she appeared in 2019. Young Ellie had been through a lot. I saw her for the first time when she was eating lunch with the other new recruits. I had thought the moment would be a transcendental experience, but all I could focus on was how badly I missed being able to glide across the room without cracking my hips. She sat down next to Dr. Myron Caldwell, who quickly grabbed her sandwich, took a bite, and placed it out of reach. Ellie's face fell. Then she stood up, walked around the table, and picked up her own food. Dr. Caldwell called over Dr. Hassenfuss, who was easily the most attractive of the new class, and motioned for her to sit beside him. Ellie turned around to find that her seat had been taken. She wiped her eye, then sat down at a different table to finish her sandwich. Entirely alone. My stomach dropped. What a fucking wuss. I'd entirely forgotten about that moment, and felt as though I was watching a stranger. Was this really the class of 2019? I'd worked wonders with idiots before, but there was a limit, even for doctors as good as me. How was I supposed to inspire this class? I can mold clay, but I can't mold shit. And what was I going to do with Ellie? "I don't have time to get to know you," I explained to the assembled group. "So make yourself stand out in some noteworthy way and I won't have to stress about it. See? I could be warm and supportive." I looked around at my noble crew. Dr. Fowler had an entire knuckle up his nostril, Dr. Brutzen was chuckling to himself and egoring me, and Dr. Caldwell reached out to pinch Dr. Hassenfuss's ass. She squeaked, turned red, and grinned at him. For fuck's sake. We had just come out of pediatric surgery, and the slapdick squad was acting like the job stopped when they clocked out. I huffed. These folks, and the patients they were half a suture away from killing, were lucky to have my nurturing guidance. 19 of you start today, and we've got a pool going with bets on how long each of you will last. I snapped to grab their attention. Don't feel any pressure, folks. I've talked with each of you in private, and my expectations are very low. I stifled a grin as I looked over my shocked charges, snorted, then turned around to walk away. They hesitated. My stomach dropped as I realized that they had no sense of respect. Goddamn. Things needed to improve quickly. You should know when to follow me and when to stay away, because I'm not going to waste time explaining what you should figure out on your own. I called to them. They quickly caught up. As we rounded a corner, I turned around to see Ellie get elbowed to the back of the line. She accepted the abuse willingly. It was very clear that she was not close to any path that led to being the chief of medicine. She barely looked able to handle being a doctor. St. Francis was going to crush this weak little butterfly by week's end. My hand shook. Was this girl going to disrupt space-time because she couldn't deal with human interaction? My mind was racing. I never played favorites, but the years at St. Francis had taught me to accept whatever message the hospital was sending my way. It expected things from me, but gave me tools in return. I just hadn't thought about how badly I would need them on day one. Hell, the list of rules phenomenon was something I didn't even think about until a few people had dropped out. On some random day each year, the mysterious stack of papers would show up at my desk. I knew not to look at them. I would simply gather them up and hand them out, knowing that each list would manifest itself to the right person. I'd nearly forgotten that they had showed up so soon in 2019. But in that moment, as I was walking down the hallway, I felt my pockets suddenly grow heavy with a stack of paper. Wordlessly, I grabbed the sheets and sent them behind me. Take one and pass it on, Dr. Endelman, I commanded offhandedly. I gave the group a moment to send them back, knowing that Ellie would be the lone person to be denied a paper, because she was last in line, and because she was a wuss. You should have the list of expectations for St. Francis, I explained as I walked on, not needing to glance rearward to know that Ellie would be panicking. I printed 18 sets of rules so that you would have to challenge one another for them, knowing that one of you would be left behind. It was harsh even for me, but I knew what Ellie was capable of, so I had to bitch slap the weakness out of her right now. If you cannot follow these rules, there will be no place for you in this hospital. It most likely means that you are unsuited to be a doctor and should consider a profession that demands a weaker mental aptitude. I stopped and turned around as though I was interested in the group, but only needed to watch Ellie. I'd observed the rest long ago, and the person we see least is ourselves. I saw sadness in her. One more tiny crack emerged in the kaleidoscope of fissures that spiderwebbed across my mind as I felt Timmy residing subconsciously in the back of her thoughts. Compartmentalize. And if you think that I'm the type to give second chances after a mistake, you're woefully underprepared for the world of medicine. I looked at each one in turn, hoping that my lesson had landed. Ellie still looked petrified. Dr. Fowler was still spelunking for that stubborn booger. Why do so many slapdicks want to be professionals? Shoveling elephant poop at the zoo is a perfectly necessary profession. And life would be so much easier if people had the decency to be honest about the future they plan for themselves. I waited for them to show some sort of initiative. Caldwell, though a douche, had at least been top 10 in his class at Johns Hopkins. Were all of them going to stare at me in mindless nihilism? Behind me, several unattended heart rate monitors beeped for attention. Well, I shot out in exasperation. Why are you standing here? People are dying. Get to work. I didn't feel bad when Dr. Caldwell screamed. The hospital had simply purged one person in exchange for sparing those he would have killed in the years ahead due to his inadequacy. I watched the scene unfold from across the hall. Dr. Matthews looked terrified as he raced into the room, but the familiar janitor nodded calmly as he swept past me and closed the door behind him. Dr. Caldwell was going to die. Many years ago, my mind had learned to accept what it could not change. My heart was slower to adapt, but it became more calloused every day. I didn't follow the janitor as he opened the door and whisked Dr. Caldwell away on a gurney. Instead, I focused my efforts on Ellie as she walked out of the room a few moments later, thinking that she was being subtle. Of course, her bright red face was about as subtle as a sledgehammer to the testicles. She was way outside of her comfort zone. I smiled,